Hey everybody, Pastor Matt here. I wanted to go over a piece of what I mentioned on Sunday regarding calling. Now, whenever we talk about calling in the midst of our evangelical circle, usually what we're talking about is a calling to a ministerial position or a calling to some sort of service. So when I came to Arapahoe Road Baptist, as I did when I went to Boones Creek Baptist in Lexington and went to other places, I would come in view of a call to be called not only by Christ, but be called by that particular group to serve in a particular capacity, whether it was music and youth, as it was in the late 90s at First Baptist Church of Clewiston, or whether it's to be called the lead pastor, both at Boones Creek Baptist in Lexington and here at Arapahoe Road in Centennial, Colorado, in South Denver. But I want to let you know that calling is not merely restricted to those things. In fact, as you read through the scriptures, one of the things that you'll see is, well, a number of things that you'll see is that the nature of calling is actually a threefold type of nature when we're looking at our Christian walk. For one, we're talking about being called to salvation. Jesus answers that call. Many are called, Jesus says, but few are chosen. So many are called to salvation. So as we respond to the Spirit's moving in our hearts and transforming our hearts to come to salvation, we see that is a calling that has been given to us from the outside in. It's a calling. Now, when we start talking about being called to not just salvation, but now we're being called to sanctification. God is calling us to move to a direction to where our spirit, our souls are more and more in charge, and that no longer does our flesh have dominion over us, but the Spirit has dominion over us. And part of that sanctifying process, it is a different pace for different people. Now, for some, like the Apostle Paul, there's an immediate understanding, but even then, Paul was still dealing with the flesh. And then there's others where there may be certain aspects of your life that will go away immediately that aren't part of the things of God. But there's other aspects of your flesh that you may be dealing with and you may be struggling with for the rest of your life. So we're called to salvation. We respond. That's justification, where our guilt has been removed. We're called to sanctification. That's where the power of sin begins to have less and less aspects of it. And then we begin to move to being called to his service. And that may be where he is calling you to a full-time or a part-time aspect of like the Apostle Paul was called to be an apostle. The 12 were called to be disciples. They were called into this particular thing. When the Apostle Paul would go to various churches, he would pray and they would lay their hands on people who were called to serve as elders of those particular churches. The aspect of calling is just a recognition that we ourselves are not the lone arbiters of understanding where we must go. The Spirit is there calling us to salvation. The Spirit is there calling us every single day, every single hour, every single minute to sanctification, to where the power of sin no longer lies on us. And by the way, that's the Holy Spirit's job as well. Yes, we are called to help each other to be able to move forward, but we're doing this by grace. We're not using the Bible as a weapon. We're not using the Bible as a way to show people, look how great I am and how terrible you are. No, we're all recognizing that there are aspects in all of our lives that the flesh is ruling and the Spirit needs to rule, and we move forward so that the flesh will no longer be that which is dealing with us. The self is that which will no longer be dealing with us. And we use the scriptures to lead people as we are on a journey together to move forward well. But if God calls you to his service, that is a special, particular call that is upon you individually. Yes, we are all called to be missionaries, but everybody's called to be a pastor. Not everybody is called to go to another part of the world in full-time service in that way. Not everybody has that. But God calls certain people to be apostles, prophets, evangelists, pastors, teachers, in order to equip the saints for the work of the ministry. And we come alongside them to be able to help them understand the word, to teach, reprove, correct, and train in righteousness. Second Timothy 3, verse 16, so that the man of God, verse 17, may be complete, not lacking in anything. Now, when it comes to a particular calling for you, um, one of the questions that I ask someone is, what would you do if you could do whatever you want? Now, this is understanding you're pursuing Christ with everything that you have. You're pursuing Him in the Word. You're pursuing Him in prayer. You were engaged in the disciplines of worshiping together. You're engaged in the discipline of I don't know. You're being obedient in what you do know. And as you draw closer to the Lord, He will give you more insight in that liberty that He has given you. He's giving you more insight to say, look, this is the gifts and the talents that I have given to you. Let's use them for your glory. And so sometimes we end up so pigeonholing the Spirit of God that we don't realize that God may actually want us working in the business world, want us working in our schools, want us working in various parts in our community. That is a calling to work in that way. It's not just pigeonholed into missionary and pastor. That God may be calling you as a missionary to work in your community. And when you recognize that calling, you begin to exude that and you begin to do that with joy. So, what may God be leading you to do as you're seeking Him, as you're praying, as you're engaged in the fellowship of the believers, as you seek for the Spirit to reign full and free in you and the flesh to go away, and as you are leading by grace and helping others to move forward in the journey as God is helping you to move forward in the journey? That's what I mean by calling. Sometimes we think it's just about service, but no, it's also a calling to salvation. There's also a calling to sanctification as well. If you have any questions, let me know. I'll be happy to fill that in as best as I can. Thanks a lot, everybody. Bye-bye.